And we're up. Hey,
Oh, we're up.
waiting for the boys to load in. Docs
Boom.
Wazzo there.
Dox me for a bit.
Yo, what a guy
There
is
you go.
this?
There you go.
Ah, Con Mad in the chat. Let's go.
Yeah, one second.
We do have chat obscuring Dane there for a bit, but it's fine.
Yeah.
That's all good.
All right, we're gonna check some audio levels, see what's what, and then we can get started. I will be bouncing up and
Okay.
down though, because there is a storm outside.
We're pretty low on
Yeah, no, that's
audio.
cool.
Are we?
I have us on full, so we seem quite low.
Okay, I can
At
turn
least
you
on
guys
my
up in
side.
Discord. You guys or me too?
No, all of us.
All of us. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll turn everyone up.
Is there a master fader that you can just turn this all up, or do you?
I already have the master one up. Let's see. Yeah.
Okay.
Whoa. Okay. Dane talk.
Okay. Huh.
Okay.
Oh, that's much better.
Is
A
it
bit.
okay?
It's a bit loud, but just to turn it a smidgen down.
Okay, that was 100. I've got you on 75 now.
Okay, perfect.
Connor, do you talk?
Speaking. Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
Okay, and I've turned myself up. How is that, everyone?
That sounds much better.
Infamous Paragon in chat. How's the audio levels, huh?
We balanced? Are we sounding good?
Yeah, we equal though. We don't want like people blasting each other.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
It says we sound good.
All right, that's good.
Perfect.
All right, so cool. We can get started. I'm Aaron Mulligan, Atomic A. Next to me is Connor,
Robot Man,
The
a
film
bit
student.
loud. Yeah.
and to his left is Dayton.
Hey. There you
Robot,
go.
Yeah, can't
I'm
help it. He's
loud.
That's
got
all
some
you're
very
getting from
valuable
me.
input.
Okay, I'm a bit loud apparently. I can turn myself down. How's that? How's that? A scuffed stream is proof of a VTuber.
Indeed.
Perfect. Okay, sick. Okay.
Okay, cool.
Well,
Cool.
today we got this kind of a ghetto string. We didn't really plan this too much. We're going to be talking about intermediality, specifically adapting like films, games, books, and stuff. Connor, why don't you start us off? You're the film student here. What's your take
Yeah.
on adapting things from the film perspective?
Yeah, you're the
I mean,
film man.
personally, I think that seeing how things get built from the ground up in the film department, right from pre-production to post-production, I think that adaptations as like as a concept is inherently kind of lazy, just because there's not much. There's a lot of room for originality. You're basically going with a pre-made blueprint. It's okay, but I think the proof is in the pudding when not a lot of them work out, and a lot of them tend to tank.
That's that's interesting. What's your take on like remakes and stuff then? Because that's the similar concept of, oh, we're just taking something that was good or popular, and we're doing it again.
That
Well,
I'm not a huge fan of that, to be honest. Maybe I'm missing mind at the
You're
good
cutting out a bit
remakes.
there,
yeah,
Connor.
Connor's cutting out. Yeah.
How am I good now?
Okay,
Yeah,
that
you
sounds
sound
good.
good
Yeah,
now.
if you want to reiterate your point there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it goes. It's like the same kind of thing. Like I think a good movie is something that's completely original, completely original from the ground up. Not to say that you can't make something good with something that's already been made, but I think that remakes and all that are just there's a lot of them tend to be very cash grabby. Not my favorite kind of
Okay.
film.
Dan, what do you think about? Oh, we were on adaptations, but let's talk about remakes for a bit here. What's your opinion on
Okay. If
film
we're
remakes?
going on remakes, a lot of the times I think remakes, instead of having like a bad story or bad characters, I mean that can play a part in it, but the majority of the reason is they don't really capture the initial movies like style, I guess it would be. Like sometimes they try and change it too much so that it doesn't have the same sort of impact that the initial movie had. At least that's for remakes, though. My problem with video game adaptations, that would probably be, is when you're adapting a video game, you have to basically take the gameplay out. So if the story of the video game itself might be good due to, the gameplay itself, because you have you change, your actions have the choice. Well, I mean, it doesn't really have choices, but
Player
you're
agency.
playing through it. Yeah, you're playing through the story. so you're more engaged in it. Whereas if it's like from the outset, it might actually be like this. You just have the story, and now you have an actor who's playing the character, but now the character isn't as personal, I would say, because you're not playing as the character anymore. So now it's not as personal, at least in my opinion.
I think
So
a lot of it has to do with intent, like with remakes or
yeah,
whatever. Look at like Halloween.
oh,
There's clear like concessions in film where it's like, okay, the people remaking it, they really love the original. They know what makes it tick. I'm not talking about
yeah,
the new Halloween
yeah.
sequels.
We talk about
Those
the.
are not the best,
I
and
mean,
that's putting it nicely. That,
the first Halloween remake wasn't too bad. I
well, that's what
enjoyed
I'm
that
saying.
one.
That was the spark. There's always got
That
to
was
be
the
that like we are actually like lovingly remaking this for a new audience. But a lot of remakes are just like, oh, we have better cameras now, we have better special effects. We'll just do it again, lol.
mm,
And I think
And that's
that's where
where it gets
Hollywood,
lazy.
yeah, that's where Hollywood falls short because a lot of it is, oh, I'm Disney. People love Lion King. Lion King make money. Make Lion King again, but with photorealistic animals. Yes, money. And then it
I like
flops. The
more.
new Lion King is, in my opinion, comparatively bad compared to the original.
Oh, absolutely. It's
I'm
just
glad I haven't watched it.
and that's the other thing about remakes specifically. It takes away the whole surprise aspect that you get from you know exactly what's
You
you're kind
Oh,
of
cutting
you
out
just
again.
cutting out a lot
reliving an
too.
old am I cutting out?
Yes.
Yeah, you cutting out a lot.
Okay. Is this okay?
Uh,
Yeah,
Theoretically, if you want to reiterate your point again.
yeah.
So that's the thing about remakes is that you already know the story if you've seen the original, and therefore you're missing out on the shock factor that often comes with a cinematic climax. You're just kind of living through an experience that you lived through before, but in a completely different way. Be it better or worse, it's nothing new.
Well,
And
That works with some remakes where it's just following the original story, so like The Lion King or something like that, where they took the animation and then they made it, what was it, live action or
yes, yes,
whatever
yes.
that garbage was. That I can understand with your point, but then you get other remakes like the Halloween remake, which it's just a continuation of the story.
well, that's the thing. Recently, Hollywood's been into requels, as Scream put it, where it's a soft reboot, but at the same time a sequel to the original. So it's got something for everyone. But back on what Connor was saying with like, audiences and such, I think that's kind of point of remakes, of which like take a look at the recently revealed Silent Hill 2. Oh, thank you, Miraculous Leah, for following.
Oh, nice.
If you look at like the recent Silent Hill 2, it's a matter of, oh, a lot of gamers haven't played this absolute classic of horror gaming. We should, and this is Konami, so I have no doubt this is also a money making thing. But
I love
it's also a matter of like, oh, okay, a lot of people haven't played this classic video game. New audiences will love this. Reboots should, in my opinion, be for new people. Like, oh, most people that are born like after 2000, like 4 or whatever, haven't seen the original Star Wars and probably won't. If we remake that, we could possibly like reignite the spark or whatever.
Fair enough.
So then, in that, if you bearing that in mind, I think a good workaround for that would be to remake things, but do it in a completely different and original way. Case in point, the Super Mario movie.
Okay, that's not a remake. That's
Not
an
a remake, not a
adaptation.
remake. It's an adaptation, but it's kind of in the same vein here. Like, okay, so basically my point is stray away from remakes and go for a rework of the initial concept. That way, people can
I
can enjoy the same thing, but in a completely different way.
I 100% agree. Look at the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. They went completely like brand new grounds, brand new like concept. Like, oh, Sonic lives on Earth. He's with a human family, whatever. Look at his little hijinks, and it worked. It was beautiful. People loved the Sonic movie.
Exactly, and that's by no means a remake, but it's an adaptation of an old concept that, quite frankly, didn't have that kind of storyline before. Completely new. It's essentially a new movie entirely, just with characters that we know and love,
The
and
Last of
an
Us show.
overarching plot.
Oh, yeah, bringing Infamous
What?
Paragon in the chat's bringing up.
Is it Last of Us show?
Yeah, the Last of Us remix for the new place coming from the HBO show. Yeah, Last of Us is getting a live action show that's coming out January, I think. I believe. Might have to fact check that.
I mean, I think The Last of Us 2 made a big enough stir for people to go to play The Last of Us. So I'm not too sure if that will actually introduce new people. Because
Oh, well, I mean,
when was Last of Us 2 released?
it's a silver screen adaptation. It's always going to be for I don't know what word to use. I'm not going to use normies. Non-gamers who don't know
Non-gaming.
anything about gaming going, man, I love The Last of Us. Oh, it was actually a video game? I should look into that. And then very
Yeah.
unlikely for those kind of people will they pick up the video game because they want to live The Last of Us.
Yeah, I think I
Or,
watched.
unfortunately, live the sequel.
Yeah, I think I watched a review on The Last of Us remake, and like besides a few graphical updates from because it was The Last of Us, and then they released another Last of Us that was like with updated graphics, and now it's like the third remake of The Last of Us. If my
Yeah,
memory
it went
serves me
from
correctly.
PS3 exclusive, remade on the PS4, and now there's The Last of Us Part 1 remake, which is on PlayStation 5 and coming to PC.
What the hell is this?
Series
Elder
rest,
Scrolls
man.
Skyrim?
The Last of Us is the new Skyrim, boys. Reboot it, put
this
on everything, put on a fridge.
Yeah, no, that series needs to rest. It's seen enough.
Well, they've got more in the works. They've got like a massively multiplayer sequel coming, I think.
I honestly could not care less for that. Yo.
Adaptation, people. I mean,
More for the
go ahead.
Well,
more for the gamers who stick to the mainstream games. But I mean, Last of Us was kind of a mainstream
No,
game.
yeah, Last of Us was insanely popular. Like, I've talked to my sister and her friends and stuff who don't play video games, and everyone's like, "Oh, I gotta play The Last of Us. The Last of Us is huge."
Maybe it's just for the people that were only playing Fortnite.
Hey, little Timmy, look at this thing. It's gonna kill you.
Maybe. I mean,
I
like,
think the first or Last of Us game was like, it was perfect, and and the series kind of just peaked there, in
I
my
mean,
opinion.
that's the thing. How do you follow up on perfection?
You don't.
You make God of War Ragnarok, but I
You
mean,
make God of War.
otherwise, how do you follow up on perfection?
If you can't make God of War Ragnarok, you don't.
You don't
make
try.
Last of Us 2. I'm talking, FIFA, Call of Duty.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
Infamous,
fair enough.
for people watching the VOD, Infamous Paragon and chat here. FIFA, Call of Duty levels of mainstream. I agree. That's right. That's a good point. People who don't exit their gaming bubble or media bubble, adaptations usually reach out to those kinds of people, which I respect. That's what it should do. Like, hell yeah, I want more people into my cool thing that I like. But at the same time, when you get a really jarring bad adaptation, it's immediately like, oh no, people are gonna think this is the thing I like. They're like disgracing what I enjoy, like what I'm attached to. Like, look at Mortal Kombat. Can you imagine if you're a huge Mortal Kombat fanboy from the video games, and then you tried to talk with someone who only watched the new reboot movie? You'd be having completely different experiences, and they'd both be claiming they're big Mortal Kombat fans.
Fair enough. But then you get Cyberpunk Edge Runners. Let's go.
That is, well, that I think that comes into Connor's like theory of adaptation, in which doing something completely original is way better than just cookie cutter copying the video game or like book or whatever and trying to do it the same.
100%, because like Edge Runners focused on like a whole set of characters. They just kept the same location, but just different characters.
I mean, even
different
setting and
stories.
like lore wise, the characters in Edge Runners actually
yeah,
like
true.
are referenced in 2077.
That's true. That's true. And I guess you see more of. I mean, I haven't gone through Cyberpunk 2077 yet, but as far as I understand, like the character in 2077 can't go into cyberpsychosis or whatever. It's not like a mechanic in game.
Yeah, no, that's not a thing.
And then Edge Runners sort of fleshes that out more and like makes it a whole lot more of an interesting concept.
No, it's exactly that's a really powerful form of adaptation in which you can take something that viewers are always like wondering about, like, oh man. I mean, look at Star Wars, like the Fall of the Jedi post like Order 66 or whatever. And then we got man, I'm going blank on the name, The Last Jedi or something, the RPG.
Last Year.
I can't help you there.
Oh, is that
unfortunately.
the EA one?
The EA one, yes.
Yeah. The Dark Souls like one.
I guess. The
Oh, I
Dark
mean,
Souls of Star Wars.
It's a Souls like in my.
But
at
anyway,
least
yeah, and we got that, and that was
it's
a really interesting take on like, oh, what happened to like some of the young Padawans? Like, what's going on there? That's in my opinion the best kind of adaptation in which old viewers are getting something new, new people are getting introduced to Star Wars or like whatever the media is. It's just like a fresh take, and like it allows new people to, it reaches new people, and it pleases the previous fans.
Fair enough.
And if I can go back to the point about Cyberpunk Edgerunners for a second, I also another thing about having like new characters in a world that's already or something along those lines is that it makes the world of the story more builds on it's world building.
It's world building,
And
exactly.
that's another thing that's very important, especially like outside of video games. It's very like, sorry, let me reiterate.
Yeah.
When you have a story that stretches across different mediums, such as video games, anime, like Cyberpunk, then having those be two completely separate concepts, but in the same world, just makes the world feel more alive. And I think that's really
Oh, 100%.
Well, I think inherently when it comes to adaptations, people who are savvy with like intermediality or like the various art forms, they have to realize the strengths and weaknesses of what you're adapting into. Like, hey, Cyberpunk 2077 is good because it's immersive and it's first person. You get to decide what V does, who you are, where you go. And that's what makes, in theory, a lot of people don't agree with Cyberpunk. That's, in theory, what makes 2077 a really wholesome, like, good experience. When it comes to, like, adapting, like, Studio Trigger did Edge Runners, if I'm remembering correct.
Yeah, they did.
Studio Trigger knows how to make anime.
Oh,
Like, they've adapted Star Wars before. They know to embrace like what makes anime good, like over the top visuals, like OST, everything. And they did that with Edgeruns, where it was like, okay, we know we're an anime. We're gonna double down on the fact that this is an animation and really focus on that.
That's true. It was very, very good, the animation wise, at least. Oh, I mean, the whole thing was great.
It came into like the faithfulness, like they used the UI from 2077, which I mean should be par for the course if you're setting it in the same world, but still, it was very like literal soundtracks from the game carried over into the anime.
And good adaptation sells other products from the series, which is why Cyberpunk 2077 got
Yeah,
a boost in sales.
2077
Holy moly!
it grew to like its highest like player count, consistent player count instance forever, like launch even.
You see, the thing is that I'm just
One second,
realizing
you guys.
now.
We've got
Oh,
to
sure,
we
no
got to break
problem.
for a bit.
Okay, no problem.
And we're back, just waiting for those two to load in.
Boom! Did I do it? Did I time it right? Oh.
Yeah, kind of. Let me see. Let's catch up with chat.
My word.
Cyberpunk didn't want the lolly character. Giga Chat Trigger said lolly things. Now,
Let's go,
hold
Rebecca.
on. Now we gotta distinguish something here. Rebecca is a short stack, not a lolly. We got a very important context.
Oh no,
here.
we're not getting into this debate.
We're not
Yeah,
getting
no,
into.
no,
We're
no,
not
no.
going into
No,
that.
no. We're on films and media.
Yes,
No,
we're on
no.
films and media. Let's
We're
try
on
bring
films
this
and
back. We
media.
went on a bit of a
But
tangent with
Trigger did say
Cyberpunk.
a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes.
Yes, no, Trigger is based as hell. But
Either way, back to the movie. Yeah. So when it's a good adaptation from a bad, oh, this is what I just thought up now, is that if it's a good adaptation from something that was considered bad, so Cyberpunk, Edge Runners with Cyberpunk 2077, and now everyone wants to go back and play 2077, so that's boosted sales. But then when it's like a bad adaptation from something that's already established and good, so like let's say the Assassin's Creed movie, no one remembers the Assassin's Creed movie, and I highly doubt that the movie did anything for the sales for the games. So
yeah, that movie
that
was
was a pretty
absolutely terrible.
It's
it's
pretty
got
interesting.
garbage.
My word, I hardly
And that's
remember anything from it.
that's a brilliant example of this is a you know what that movie felt like?
What did it feel like?
It felt like a Wattpad fanfiction about Assassin's Creed.
What bad fan fiction of a generic white male being the savior of assassins in history?
Yeah, that's all it was.
No
Someone
offense
wrote that
to,
on
I think it
Wattpad
was
and had
Michael.
enough
I
money
think it
to
was
make it
Michael
into a movie.
Fassbender who was the main character.
Michael
That was him.
Fassbender.
That was him.
Oh my word! He's the
No,
creator
don't
of
you dare!
Fazbear
No.
Entertainment. We're gonna go deep into the lore. What
Let's be
happened in
serious
the
here, Danny.
Bite of '87? Tell me,
Let's have some
assassin. Tell
decorum
me.
here.
Let us have a little bit of decorum for Assassin's Mid.
There is no Assassin's Creed movie. There is an Assassin's Creed movie.
This is no Assassin's
There
Creed
is.
movie. What are you
There
talking
is.
about?
Search deep into your heart. You know it to be true.
But no, that's a good point. A lot of like bad adaptations do get swept on the rug, like the Mario movie. There actually is already a Mario movie, and it's
Is
so
it
horrendous. It's so
what?
terrible and bad that
That's the
everyone.
live action one.
Yes, that's the live action one.
There's a
Yeah.
live
Where
action.
Mario and Luigi are like plumbers in Brooklyn. I haven't seen it in a while. And like Bowser's just like the king, like the leader of a mafia, but he actually is like a big lizard.
The plumbers in Brooklyn.
I mean, they are like a lot of old Nintendo like manuals state that they're like plumbers from Brooklyn, which is why the new movie has Mario come out of a pipe and look confused, and like he has like a kind of Brooklyn accent. Everyone is freaking out that this is actually going to be like a thing where
Oh my word! It's a
Mario's in the real world and he goes to the Mushroom Kingdom.
sequel. It's always been a sequel. Can't believe this. That's blown my mind.
Yeah, this new Mario movie is really gonna be our saving grace for
We hope.
the Mario movie franchise.
We hope.
Yeah, we hope.
I don't want to jinx anything. It looks great. I'm only miffed at Chris Pratt, kind of, because like he's not a voice actor. Well, at least he is. He was great in the Lego movie. What the heck? It feels like he's phoning it in that trailer. Maybe it's just a bad trailer. It's just like it really just felt like Chris Pratt saying, "Here we come," and that was it. And he was just following Toad. Every other voice actor in that trailer was like giving it 110%. Jack Black was killing it as Bowser. Oh my word!
I
maybe
didn't even know that
if
was
there's
Jack
like
Black, to be
something
honest with you.
happened.
At first.
Sorry.
Well, that's
Maybe
good.
maybe something happened like in a previous scene before Mario falls down the pipe, and then we're just getting like afterwards, which makes it confusing.
I'm hoping they
Also,
live.
Jack Black
Man,
was
I'm
amazing.
gonna like sound like such a nerd dropping the Mario lore. I hope
Oh
they live
no,
in New Donk City and then go to the Mushroom Kingdom.
Dong City.
Jack Black was amazing. Hell yeah. And
Yeah,
I always
I'll be
forget his
very
name.
upset.
Keegan Michael K.
Keegan Michael Key.
Key is a key. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
He voices Toad, and that was great. I didn't expect him to pull it off that well.
Oh, I love Toad. He was great.
And we're getting Seth Rogen's Donkey Kong. I can't wait to hear that. That'll be funny.
Well, I have to say, I'll be
Really?
very upset. The way that trailer framed Mario like being very unfamiliar with his surroundings makes me feel like we're gonna have. Someone brought this up to me before. I can't remember who it was, but it makes me feel like Mario's gonna be in the real world, and the Mario movie is essentially gonna be an
An
isekai.
isekai.
Oh no! Like a
I'm
The best
very
reincarnated
isekai
upset.
anime of all
Mario.
time. Mario movie.
Oh no!
Man.
I'll be very upset. I will never forgive them.
Dude,
Monster
I
Hunter
think
movie?
Illumination is very aware as to how thin the ice they're skating on is.
Oh, there was a Monster Hunter movie.
Oh, that was terrible.
Oh my word! I remember like seeing something about it, but I didn't care
Didn't
enough
they make
about it
like
to watch
multiple?
it. Is multiple?
Yeah, there's
What?
multiple.
I thought there was only one.
I think I remember that there being a live action Monster Hunter,
Was it
and then I remember
2020?
them like either planning a sequel or a sequel came out.
Well, damn! If there's a sequel to that, I don't know.
By the way, when I pitched this concept to the stream, my main thought was, and I wonder if Connor's going to disagree with me here. I believe taking games, at least immersive games, into films or like anime and stuff is ultimately a reductive process with adaptation because it immediately discounts what the intent of design was. Like, oh, video games are something you interact with. It's something like player agency, like immersion, and it varies depending on how good the game design is and the intent and the themes or whatever. But like when it comes to adapting into a film, you immediately remove the core intent. Like someone's busy making like a Silent Hill 2 movie upcoming, and I really think that is ultimately, even if it's really cool, that is ultimately going to be less of an experience than actually being in Silent Hill, playing as James, like encountering these creatures, like fighting for your life. What's your take on that, Connor? What do you think of that?
Well, I think like the themes of identity and agency in video games are very, very central, like determining what kind of experience it's going to be. And agency is a very big thing because, well, like you said, player agency completely determines how you experience a world and how you make changes within that world. And you don't have that in film. So trying to recreate, trying to give a sense of agency to a viewer who is not interacting with the story at all is a very, very difficult line to walk, especially when you're taking a story and adapting a story from a video game where it is an interactive world. So I think the only way you can really make something like that is if you completely play to the strengths of the medium and try and make it as immersive as possible without leaning into the game mechanics and the video game aspects. How that's done, I have absolutely no idea, but
I'm
Well, for
gonna.
Silent Hill
I do
2,
think
Go
oh
ahead,
yeah,
David.
for Silent Hill 2, I think probably one of the aspects they can take out is James sticking his hand down a toilet and find
No,
some
that is
bullets.
vital. That's vital to the plot. He needs to do that.
No, it's not violent to the plot. He just wants bullets.
But anyway, let me pose a challenge to Connor right here, right now.
Right
Amazon
here.
Prime, just well, not just this happened a while ago, announced that they're going to be adapting Life is Strange and Disco Elysium into a TV series format. How would you, as an independent filmmaker, go about adapting that? Specifically, Life is Strange. I don't know if you're familiar with Disco Elysium.
I'm not too familiar with this Elysium, but Life is Strange, I'm quite familiar. So how would I adapt that into a series, you said? Or
Yeah, yeah,
show?
yeah. How are we on spoiler territory?
Yeah.
Do you want to go into it, or try to
Let's
be as vague as possible? If you need to spoil, just say you're going to spoil something.
I mean, to be
yeah, I'll
fair,
try
there's
and
like two major options near the end.
And,
So
and to be fair, Life is Strange is like a 8-year-old video game at this point.
that's true. It is
I
kind of old.
still won't spoil much. I won't give much narrative away. I'll just speak about it. I'll be vague.
Okay.
So
Mm.
I think as far as video games go, Life is Strange is probably one of the more adaptable ones for film and television.
Really?
Just because the
I
story,
wouldn't say so.
just because. Well, if I
I
can
mean,
continue my point,
yeah, thematically.
Oh yeah, okay.
thematically, and although it like that point doesn't really make sense because the game is literally completely choice based. I think it's a little bit easier to adapt something that is choice based rather than something that you have to, rather than something action based or something where like a horror video game like Silent Hill.
So wait.
I would argue that life is.
You're stating that you think it would be easier to adapt a choice-heavy game rather than a straightforward like horror like Silent Hill 2.
Yes, and I say that because because it's more cut and dry as to what you need to adapt. Whereas like something like there's a with I basically what I'm saying is that there are more aspects that need to be taken into consideration a game like Silent Hill, whereas Life is Strange is more just the choices and how to go about them.
I would
I'm
hard
Although the
gonna
fact,
disagree.
have to disagree with that. I think because the whole appeal of what's not Silent Hill of Life is Strange is that you get different choices, which leads to different outcomes. So everyone's story is different. Like it might be subtly different, but it's all different. Whereas something like Silent Hill 2, there is only like a linear path that will be taken, so you can adapt that a whole lot easier and you can still stay true to the story. Whereas Life is Strange, if you try to adapt it and then say because I won't spoil it, but like there's two choices at the end that are big choices,
Won't spoil
and
it.
now
Here's
you
what happens at
choose.
the end.
No, no, I'm not. I'm not. I'm just saying there's two choices. I won't say what the two choices are, but there's two choices, and you choose one of the choice for the movie. Now, everyone that chose the other choice is gonna be
Exactly.
annoyed. It's just like, no, why would they choose that? That makes no
Yeah,
sense.
that's not my playthrough. That's not that. I don't
Exactly.
identify with what happened there. I
Yeah.
think I agree. Infamous Paragon on the chat says Life is Strange can easily be adapted into a drama. I agree. It's supernatural
Oh,
teen drama, easy peasy. Follow the plot, simple. I just think there's inherently going to be something missing because the core intent of Life is Strange is literally like actions have consequences. You never know how important you are in the grand scheme of things. And theoretically, if you could go back and like make all the right choices, or like be a different person, be more extroverted, be more like proud of yourself, or like brave or whatever, hang out with people you wouldn't usually, like go back and see things you wouldn't, how would your journey be affected, and how would this change your processing of like Dayton brought up, the final two endings? It's more about who did you become as a person that will affect how you come across this final like challenge. And I think that's just going to be missing from a TV series, because it's going to be like, there'll be a cool montage of like Max rewinding stuff, or like, oh wow, that's so weird, I can say something else, or like be a detective. I don't think the TV series can focus on that without being like really boring or slow paced.
To be
Well,
fair,
yes,
the
right.
drama in the Life
May
is
I?
Strange. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. So but that's my point. My point is that well, if we go back to what we were saying earlier about adaptations and remakes, you guys are thinking about it in the sense that if you were to just take the story of Life is Strange and put it into a TV show, and that's, well, I see exactly where you guys are coming from, but that's why I think it would work better as some form of um adaptation where you kind of maybe not take maybe like work with the initial story, or just but in a sense where like it's a completely different concept, or something is reworked entirely, emulate the same kind of feeling without having it be choice based.
I mean, what
And
I would probably say.
the reason I say that I would argue that Life is Strange is easier to adapt, like Silent Hill, is because a horror game is an experience, and Life is Strange is
You cut out.
Life is Strange. What is it?
a horror game is a more rounded experience. Life is Strange is a story with choices and different endings. So if you could somehow take that story and um put it into a linear plot with the same characters and the same theme and the same message, I would say that the experience would be similar, and that experience is what would be easier to recreate than that of a horror game.
Well, that comes into what Dane brought up earlier. It's Life is Strange's polarized AE reference, but we're in the like the literal fork in the road near the end, where you have literal different endings. How can one adapt a story that doesn't have a true actual ending, where it's like, oh, one could happen or the other?
See, that's where I was gonna say. Life is Strange. The universe would make a good drama,
Oh, yeah.
as long as it doesn't involve anything to do with Life is Strange, in the sense of like the characters, and maybe possibly the setting in terms of the town. Like if they went to a different town, but still kept like the same sort of
So you'd be saying an
like
adaptation of like a brand new thing. It's
exactly,
set with the same like formulaic like Life is Strange, like, oh, teen goes through trauma, gets a power of some
exactly.
sort that relates to them spiritually.
And then they could
Blah blah
probably
blah.
have like a news clipping of like what happened
Well, that's
in
that's what
the main
I'm
game, like type of deal.
well, that's what I'm saying with the Life is Strange adaptation, in which I really do think the first game is the absolute worst choice you could have made in adapting. At least like difficulty wise, the first game has a really good plot. I think would make a great TV drama. I'm not saying that's a bad idea. I'm saying Life is Strange 2, and especially True Colors, would be a lot easier to adapt, because they don't specifically, the main powers aren't about choice making and like different takes in life and like rewinding. Life is Strange 2 is about the trouble of like being an immigrant, or like racial segregation in America, and the power is telekinesis, so you could easily run with that. True Colors is a mystery thriller where she can read people's emotions. They're a lot more linear than Life is Strange 1, which the whole intent of Life is Strange 1 was that every little scenario you're in has lots of branching thingies, and you can explore all of them and like run around with time powers and such.
Yeah, Life is
I
Strange
would
one.
love to establish some sort of method where you could have branching choices in film and television, but that doesn't,
That
from what I've
I
seen, doesn't really work.
Yeah, Netflix has tried, and it's okay, but it's ultimately just,
It's
oh no,
just
the movie
okay.
paused. Which scene do we want to see next?
Yeah.
Wait, someone's tried that?
Netflix does it. They've got
Oh no.
Black
Black
Mirror
Mirror
Bandersnatch.
Bandersnatch, I believe it was.
No.
Not Bandersnatch, not Bandersnatch. What am I saying?
What's Bandersnatch?
It's
Yeah.
was it Bandersnatch?
Yeah, Bandersnatch, the game dev one. He's like, oh, I make video game, but things are going weird.
It's funny because the
Yes,
problem
was-
with
in
the,
First
the problem
Paragon,
with
they are
the
adapting Life is Strange 1. At least that's what they alluded to because they used a picture of Max to announce it.
oh well with a choice-based movie that would be terrible because you would make them like maybe you could do like a happy response in one scene and the next scene just like absolute anger over nothing. And that sounds silly
That's
to
my
me.
thing. With like Life is Strange 1, you could have there's so many different instances of Max. Like you can make her really extroverted or you can make her really shy. How are they gonna they're clearly like they're adapting it, so they're gonna have to just make a type of Max that they're gonna stick with. Like, oh, she becomes more confident because she can. Yeah, I agree. In First Paragon, I think 2 would be better to adapt. But anyway, it's just like a weird thing, like with what Dayton brought up earlier with how polarized it becomes. It's a matter of they're just gonna have to pick one instance of Max to create, and then roll with it and make like certain choices or whatever narratively, which it's not bad. Like it'll still be
I
entertaining.
don't see that working at all.
But
Thought them out of
it's just the thing
adventure.
of I played Life
See,
is
if you
Strange and I was like a bit more shy or like a bit more restrained or like I didn't do that, I didn't hurt that person's friends with me. And then it's a thing of oh I'm watching the series, this Max is very different. I feel kind of like detached from her now.
look, if you want to adapt, if they're adapting Life is Strange 1 specifically, right? And let's say hypothetically they were gonna do
Oh no,
they were
we cut out.
hypothetically they were gonna do the whole Netflix thing where you'd make your own choices and such just in that
Yeah.
format, then just play the video game.
Yeah, I just play the video
Yeah.
game. It's a way better experience.
Oh, in
The
general.
video game experience as
general.
is pretty solid. It's actually perfect. So adapting that story specifically into a movie format or a television show format would not work because the story is not built for that kind of medium. It is built for an interactive world and an interactive story where the viewer or the player chooses their own branches and chooses their own ending. So putting that in, the only way I can see that work is if you have the same world but completely different characters and a completely different story and maybe a few references to the Life is Strange that we know here and
Yeah.
there.
Exactly.
That's the only way I can see that working.
There's a catch now though. We did focus on Life is Strange a lot, but Silent Hill 2 has multiple endings.
Oh yeah, it does. You're right.
Silent
Obviously,
Hill
they're gonna
2
pick the dog
psychologically
one.
profiles the player as they're playing and gives them an ending depending on how they behaved.
See,
Yeah,
that's exactly why I said Life is Strange would be easier to adapt because it's more linear and story based. Whereas Silent Hill is an experience and the world reacts to the player. You don't get that in
Well, that's my
film
thing.
and television.
With all of these video games, the ones they always choose to adapt are like obviously corpos are going to be like, oh, Life is Strange is popular. Corpo. Life is Strange is popular. Let's adapt it, make money on Amazon Prime. But like Disco Elysium is also extremely like player based. Like literally from the second you boot up the game, you have to make your character like a Dungeons and Dragons character where like he can be charismatic or he can be like a really intelligent but really bad at socializing. He can die to like being sneezed on, but like be a super like Sherlock Holmes detective. And that's just immediately taken away by a series where it's like, okay, what type of Harry is the series gonna focus on? Because we can't be like varied. We can't make choices and adapt as we go along the case. That won't work in a TV series.
I think what they'll try to do is just make him generic.
I think I know how they're gonna adapt Harry because there's like a collective like community understanding of how Harry behaves, and it's just funny alcoholic man.
Alcoholic man.
But then it's a thing of the entirety of Disco Elysium plays like Dungeons and Dragons, where you roll a dice and it compares like what you're strong at and like what experiences you've gone through, and they affect like your little skill checks. Like
Man,
you can be friends with your detective partner if you're nice to him, or if you're not like a bumbling idiot and like make him think you're stupid. And then later on in the game, depending on how much he trusts you or how much of an idiot he thinks you are, he'll behave differently and like trust you more. I don't think they can adapt that in a series like and make it as impactful because it'll just be like, oh yeah, Kim trusts Harry, of course they're partners. But in the game, it's a full-on thing of, oh man, I wonder if I'm impressing Kim or not. I wonder if he thinks I'm an idiot. Oh,
It's that
Nah,
level of
that
interaction that you're just shafting when you shift the medium.
yeah, they'll just take out a dice in the middle of like choosing an option, and they'll just be like, ah, and they throw a dice on the floor. Ah, sorry, I got a 3. Sorry,
got a 3. Bye.
I got a 3. Slams his head into the ground.
That's the thing. They're making a Dungeons and Dragons. I think it's either a show or a movie. And like, cool. Dungeons and Dragons has a lot of like leg room for making adaptations, but at the same time, it's Dungeons and Dragons, the most like be with your friends, imagining the scenario and improving thing on the planet.
To be fair, they also made a World of Warcraft movie.
Well, yeah, but that was hot garbage. So
Yeah, it was not.
look
It
at
was terrible.
we got Infamous Paragon in the chat again. Devs have all the data. They could choose the most common features and roll with that. Well, that's my problem.
Yeah.
That's what I assume they're gonna do. They're gonna be like, oh, most people know Harry as the purple option Harry, which is the dramatic, the social Harry, but he's a bit of an idiot. He's a bit of a lug, but he's really funny, and that's just what they're gonna roll with. And I feel
Oh, I
like
like
it
the
discounts
funny.
people who like went with the intelligence build, like, oh, immense calculus genius but bad at socializing, and then it's immediately just a different Harry. That's like the point of Disco Elysium. I'm not going to go into spoilers. Is that you define what type of person Harry is while he tries to figure that out himself because he has like amnesia at the beginning of the game.
Amnesia. They got that
You,
amnesia.
you know, I would argue that in order to make a good adaptation from a video game, it takes a truly skilled filmmaker to do that, and I think that is one of the highest levels, like one of the hardest challenges in like let's focus on filmmaking now. I would say that is one of the hardest things you can do is to make a good adaptation. And if you can pull that off, then that is a true testament to your skill. Which is why I think that like it takes it I it's something that you have to know both medium, the ins and outs of both mediums in order to get right. And if you don't know that, then it's just going to be a basic movie with a subpar plot that everyone already knows. So yeah, I think like that is what I do think that it takes one of the highest levels in order to pull something like that off successfully. And I think although this isn't filmmaking, but someone who really knows what their department, who sort of marries film and video games, is Joseph Ferris.
Yes, yes. But the thing
And
is,
he's a
Joseph himself never adapts. He makes new things, and he
but
just
he
takes
marries
inspiration.
mediums.
Yes, he is deadly aware of intermediality. That guy knows what makes films good, what makes games good, and how they can help each other.
And that's the kind of person you need in order to make a good a good adaptation for a film, for one, or just anyone who's dealing with the combination of two mediums.
I mean, speak of the
That kind of
devil.
strays away from my initial point, but
No, speak of the devil, Connor.
yeah,
They actually are adapting Joseph Ferris's "It Takes Two" into a film.
who is adapting it?
I don't know. I don't think he is though. I
If it's not
think
him,
I
then
think he's supervising, but I don't know if he's directing.
I mean, to be fair, it was linear as well, so
yeah.
that
Yeah,
makes
no,
it a
I
whole
think
lot
It Takes Two
easier.
will work really well, especially if Joseph is helping. It'll lose like there's always gonna you're always gonna lose something when adapting. Like It Takes Two is gonna miss that little like connection to the players of you're
Yeah.
actually like cooperating, you're actually going through the motions, helping each other. But like it'll be cool. Like yeah, It Takes Two works.
Then I think the workaround there is if you're gonna lose something, whatever you're losing in the video game that makes the video that is very fine-tuned and tailored to video games, it has to be made up for in the film department. You have to break down what makes a film good, what engages an audience emotionally a non-interactive plot, and hone in on that and twist it and craft it to the story that you're adapting. And that's how you can make it. That's how you can make it, give it the same hard-hitting experience by just trying like playing like making full use of the medium and not sparing anything there.
Yeah. What's the thing though?
which is very difficult, and that's why I say that it takes a really really talented to do that, because how, quite frankly, how do you, I mean, people in my like directing classes are still figuring out how to do that for their own original stories. How would one go about doing that for something that's already been made?
I agree. I think, man, I kind of forgot my point while you were talking there.
Apologies.
I think it's always going to be a matter of. Oh yeah, no, I remember now. When it comes to adapting, I think there's always gonna not. There's definitely always gonna factor in bias of like the OG audience or like the original product. Whenever you adapt a video game, there's always gonna be like, "What's the point? You're ruining my video game. Oh man, Sonic shouldn't look like that. Why is he on Earth? Wah 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 wah."
Yeah.
And I think a responsible and mature like adapter, if we're gonna use that as the term, will realize they're never gonna capture one-to-one mirror the same experience, and they should just double down on what makes the chosen like what you're adapting into good, and like with films and such.
Yeah, it's the overall is that it's a very difficult line to walk. It's
Oh
a
yeah,
very difficult thing to get right.
that's well, that's my thing. I'm always like, adapting's cool, whatever, but you can almost always see when it's cash grab or genuinely wanting to bring this to a new audience.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I agree. We might be closing off here in a bit. This is going to be a shorter stream. We got a smaller time frame here. Any other points you want to bring up?
Now that I've got myself thinking about Joseph Ferris, I would like to bring up the whole marriage between mediums, as in how you can see this in all of Joseph Ferris's games, obviously, but also and especially in Life is Strange: True Colors. There are a lot of cinematic and film-esque elements in there that make it a very well, it makes for a very cinematic experience just in a video game. And I think that is a very nice direction for a lot of video games nowadays, especially ones that are more story-based. And it's because it makes it feel like a movie in the cinematic sense, but it gives you your own choices, which is essentially just the choose your own ending, but better. And yeah, what do you guys think about that
I
as
think
a concept?
I think there's a guy called Yahtzee. He does Zero Punctuation on
Oh
YouTube,
yeah.
and he does the Escapist magazine. Fantastic journalist. I love him. If you haven't seen him, I highly recommend you watch him. He breaks down video games and films and such in a fantastic way, and he made the points of like, oh, a lot of games, like films itself, we can relate this to films, are in the very early stages of being their own thing, finding their own identity. Like with films, films were like an adaptation of stage plays originally, and eventually only now do we like recognize their true identity of like what makes them unique, why films are like why we like films or like stage plays and such. Video games, or I wouldn't say like too much, but inherently came off an originally an existing idea of, oh, how do we? What if we could interact with like videos? What if we could like make board games on screens or whatever? And I think it's a matter of a lot of video games these days lean into the cinematic to look cool, but in that like same like stance, they lose a lot of what makes video games good or like what makes a game a really great game. Like Disco Elysium is has almost no like I wouldn't say cinematic. The game has a lot of like really well good set pieces and such. But like it's painted, it looks like a point and click game. There's paint splashes and everything when you make choices. Like there's color theory depending on like what kind of Harry you are. And then there's games like Life is Strange True Colors where a lot of it looks really pretty and the lighting's nice and it looks like photorealistic at times, like The Last of Us. And that's cool. Like I love looking at pretty things that look like films and I'm moving them. But I think it reduces what makes games good because a lot of devs are like, okay, make it photorealistic, make it look like a movie. And that's bad. It's like I'm not here for a movie. I'm here for a video game. a lot of game industries like AAA devs are doing this thing where they make cinematic games, and it's like, oh, look at this cutscene, look at that set piece that you're not doing. It becomes a matter of you're emulating films too much. I'm not here for a film. I'm here for a video game. And I would 100% pick an art style game like Disco Elysium over a photorealistic or like cinematic game like The Last of Us, because that's what I'm here for. That's the gaming experience. Not to discount cinematic games; those are really fun. I love cinematic games, but it's becoming a thing of we are emulating each other too much and not focusing on what makes us individual and what makes us unique. If you get what I'm saying.
Oh, no, that makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that reminds me of like the what's it? The video games that are like live action type movie choice based things. Like I've seen a couple of them on Steam or whatever, where it's legit just people doing like a film, and then it'll stop and it'll give you three choices or whatever,
I've got a
and
good
then you do that.
example.
I
Detroit
forgot
Become
like
Human.
I mean,
Oh, yes.
That game
ooh,
is a
that is
video
very
game, but it is 90% cinematics. It is look at cool thing, push analog stick up, make choice.
that's
That is the
true.
David Cage way of designing games, and I do not subscribe to the way they design games. And people, a
But
lot
there
of
is a market
people,
for it.
yeah, there's a market for it. Detroit Become Human was really fun. I played it like
Oh,
once,
it's
and I was
very
like,
fun.
that was cool. And it comes into things like Telltale though, but Telltale, at least I think, does it better. But they are very similar ways of designing a game. I think I'm going back to Yahtzee. I love its work. The monorail or like the roller coaster game design where you're just there for the journey and you like pick a fork in the road. And that's the kind of game design that I don't agree with, like the cinematic like slideshow machine of look at cool set piece, press button, make choice. Okay, look at different set piece depending on what you button you pressed. Cool, look at that. Whereas Disco Elysium is thank you, Paragon. Visual
No,
novels are a thing, and that is just book video game, and I
I
agree.
do.
But
Uh,
and then like with Disco Elysium again, you can have a completely different experience from the guy next to you playing Disco Elysium. You can die in the first minute of the game, and that's it. That's the story of Disco Elysium. Or you could go on an alcoholic adventure where you beat up ruffians in a church and not investigate the murder that you're here to investigate. Or you could solve it like immediately if you're really smart. And that's good game design. That is completely different experiences and not, oh, player picked this option, they should go to this scene now. But it's still like a kind of path, like there's a branching narrative. For me,
worst,
it's
the
like
worst offender
timelines.
one that I remember was from Telltales, where it was like I think it was like in the first episode of the Walking Dead season 1 for Telltale, where the choice was you either save, I think it was the female reporter or the, I forgot who the dude was,
The sound guy. The
the
sound guy.
sound guy. Yeah, you could save one of them, and no matter who you saved, like later down the road, they end up the same. Their outcome is the same. No matter who you save there, their outcome is the same, and there's no way to change that.
Well,
And
that's the
that
thing.
annoyed me.
It goes into the man. I keep forgetting what the term was. I'm gonna just say monorail type game that a Telltale or a David Cage game is, where you're ultimately ending up in the same place, but what you see is different. And it's like that's cool. That's like Life is Strange and stuff. But like that's ultimately like too much like a movie.
Yeah.
And I do think that like there's a, I mean, to each their own ultimately. But look at where my interests are. I'm very much into filmmaking, and that is very evident. And therefore I really enjoy the cinematic experience of a video game where I can think this is just like a movie which I love and cherish, except I am in control, and I love that. But by the same token, I absolutely understand your point how that's not the gaming experience, where it's more focused on the cinematic and less focused on the game mechanic.
That's that's the thing. Gaming is such a broad and beautiful like genre. Well, not genre. Medium? Yeah, medium.
Medium.
Yeah.
Wait, it's I I don't know. Using the term the gaming experience was kind of like a bit gatekeepy of me. But like No, you can't discount like what games are trying to present. Visual novel, I love visual novels, and most of them are just click, next page, click again, make choice, and I love them. I love visual
Visual
novels.
novel.
Exactly, it's literally
Exactly.
just a visual novel, and there's FMVs, which are just literally film video games. I'm not discounting
Oh yeah,
like games that are monorail. I play a ton of monorail games. I have a Life is Strange tattoo for crying out loud. It's it's just a matter of I feel like the industry as a whole is leaning into let's be like films, which we shouldn't because games are their own thing. And if we leaned more into what can we do with gaming, how can we like make it its own unique experience? How can we push the like medium to its limits? Is what I think we should be doing. But just it's becoming a thing of AAA games like, oh, who has the best photorealistic graphics? Wow, look at the pores on Ellie's face. Look at the ray tracing. Look at the lighting.
I think that all stems from the fact that the film industry has dominated a very, very long time. But I personally don't think it will. In fact, I think video games are starting to take over.
Video games
But
actually
I think it's
do gross higher than films.
well, there you go. But I think that because the film industry has dominated entertainment from um, purely because it came first. The technology was there first. Um, I think that is just a byproduct of like
The times.
video games trying to emulate film. A byproduct of this is something very popular. How can we be more like this? When I don't think that should be the case. Because if they just focus on and hone in on being themselves and not try to replicate something like replicate films, then it'll be its own perfect experience for what it is.
Well, I
And
think it's just the infancy of video games in general. Like, it is very much still in its baby phase because it's like a new thing. Like, only our generation and like the generations
yeah,
just before
exactly.
us are comfortable with video games, like as a thing in
Yeah.
general. So we're gonna always have
Whereas
that like tie to films. Where like all the old people, not to discount the old people, like they are the legends, they are the pioneers who make video games still have, even if not intentionally, that hook to, ooh, like film. Film is the thingy. Film's cool, and like that's like you kind of like a lot of people in the world assume that films are still the top dog of like entertainment and such, whereas
yeah,
video games like outgrow sport and film combined, and even TV series. I don't think people realize like how big the medium is.
even people within the video game industry.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like a big information like understanding that like oh games are like this niche thing where in modern times games really aren't like almost everyone knows what a video game is at this point.
definitely. I think at least like every single household, well, I mean, at least in like first world countries, will at least have a console or some sort of
Or like at least be
way to,
familiar with it.
yeah, or at
Exactly.
least be familiar. Yeah.
Like look at high school. I'm not going to dox myself here. But like in high school, like in the 90s and stuff, being a gamer was like a one person thing like, "Oh, that guy plays video games. Look at that nerd or whatever."
I mean, to a point, that was just arcades.
Yeah, to the point where that was just arcades. It's like, "Oh man, we're going to hit the arcade. Haha, Stranger Things." And like those kids are like depicted as nerds as like the general like 90s stigma or whatever. Whereas nowadays like even the jocks are talking about FIFA at least or like Call of Duty or even
Yeah.
Fortnite and PUBG.
Everyone plays a video game of sorts,
Exactly. Everyone's
and everyone can enjoy
recognizing
something.
yeah, the medium is like powerful.
Just like the movies are divided into genres,
Yeah,
where there's
exactly.
something for everyone. Video games
Yeah.
have, well, obviously they have genres, but more specifically, there is something out there for everyone, just in a bit of a broader sense.
Yeah. I think it's just a matter of the times, you know, films used to be, whoa, look at moving pictures, that's insane. That probably that's a neat little thing, probably won't get off. And now films are
Mm.
just something literally everyone just thinks about like it's commonplace. I don't think
I
we've
mean,
reached that point with games yet, but I do think it will become a thing in the coming years of like people adopting video games as the generalized normalized thing.
films used to be such a marvel of engineering, like physical engineering. Um, in the olden days of film, the movie was made up of a whole bunch of physical frames and reels that were cut out by hand and stuck together in order to make the moving pictures with intercuts and different whatever. Whereas now it's just take a video, digitize it, and use some sort of software to put it together. Obviously, it goes much broader than TV, but I think the magic of making a movie is kind of wearing off with the constant improvement of technology and availability of software and such.
Yeah.
I think
Well, I
it's a
mean,
matter of accessibility, I think. Whereas, like, literally everyone can make a film. Can everyone make a
Yeah.
good film? No. Will it
No.
be high quality? Definitely not. But it's a matter of, yeah, it's a common thing. Everyone knows films. Everyone understands films. Anyone can engage with it.
That's why I say the movie magic is starting to wear off.
yeah, I mean, what I was thinking of was like, you remember Avatar when that was coming out, and everyone was freaking about how it's 3D. It was like, wasn't it like one of the first 3D films or something like that?
Yeah,
Yes. One of the
I think
first
it really
3D.
was.
I think, yeah. And so everyone was like going off, and it grossed quite a decent
Highest
amount of
grossing
money.
film of all
Highest
time.
growth, yeah. So, and then in my mind, that's kind of like ray tracing to me, in like the sense of we've come so far in video games that ray tracing is happening, type of deal. Like 3D happened, now we're getting ray tracing in video games.
I mean, that's a good point. It's a matter of like the technical marvel of our times. Like
Yeah.
Avatar was fantastic. It was a pioneer. It really did break the mold. But man, Avatar did not make that much of a cultural impact. Can you remember anything from Avatar? What's the name of the
There
main
were blue
character?
Maybe they were blue people.
Blue
uh,
people.
I have no idea.
Exactly. I don't remember Avatar. I don't even think I liked Avatar that much, other than 3D was cool.
it was
And it's a thing of like, even video games back in the day, like if you had mocap in your video game, that was insane. Look, there's a real person in video game. They move so realistically. That's crazy. And nowadays, that's like the
Still
norm.
feels insane.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
mocap is still impressive in games and such. But now it's like just an expected thing. Like, oh, Kratos is obviously mocapped. Look how realistic he is. Look how good he moves. Look at the actor.
And that just comes with trying something new and then starting to and refining it into a normal practice.
Exactly.
Just like
same with
just like
3D.
in film, when films were first digitized, it was such an in marvel of engineering. When film cameras could just record straight onto a hard drive instead of having to. It is
Yeah,
that broke the mold in
Might
the
repeat your
behind the
point.
scenes
You were cutting
department.
off.
yeah, you're
Might
cutting out a
repeat it.
lot more now.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. So when films started becoming fully digitized in the sense that the cameras would record straight onto a hard drive instead of having to run through a film reel, that was that was that broke the mold in the post-production department in the behind the scenes, because all of a sudden there wasn't a physical reel that was running through the camera, and when that ran out, then it was done. Now it's just completely digital. It records straight onto a hard drive. You plug that, edit, and you edit it on a software that's whatever software is used. That whole workflow is just completely reduced because of the mere fact that the cameras work with hard drives instead of physical reels that spin, and that in itself broke the mold for the film industry, and the results show there's so much more production value nowadays. But I think that the effects are less noticeable just because of the fact that it's not as obvious to the viewer. Like while post production in film is very evident, and like the progress is very evident, it's a little bit different to seeing like a graphical change in between video games throughout the years.
That's a good
If that
point.
makes sense.
Well, no, I agree. It's like what we've been mentioning so far. It's a matter of how fast we can adapt into the norm. Like, oh, what is industry standard? What do we understand as an audience? What do we understand as producers, creators, etc., etc. Like you said with films, like from analog to digital, from frame by frame to VFX to green screening to rotoscoping, such and such. And like the same holds true for video games. It was a thing of what can I fit on 24 megabytes? And nowadays it's like, okay, we don't have a size limit. Like if we're AAA, you can make it 100 gigabytes. The players will just download it, lol.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's true. Damn 100 gigabyte games. I hate you.
They are
So
very
big.
pretty, but they are very annoying.
It's like, wow, you're super pretty, but I can't play it. I'm out of space either. I have to only play this game.
I mean,
Or
that brings up. We're gonna start closing up here because we're getting close to our
yeah.
time limit. It brings up a good thing of accessibility, where games used to you'd have to go to the store, find the box, hope they have the new copy of Sonic Unleashed or whatever on PS2, and then buy it, and then you'd bring it home, put it in the PlayStation. And nowadays, even with films, it's a matter of, man, we can just release this on streaming or whatever. Oh, they can just be put on the online store. We don't have the need for the physical like gathering aspect to put it in like in a sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, that's a point we might have to bring up next stream or whenever we talk next. Like accessibility in media, how like streaming and ease of access is a blessing, of course. That's fantastic that we can easily gather new media and like experience new things. But simultaneously, it also hurts the creative process, like cinema. That like going to the movies with your friends or like with a significant other or just by yourself and sitting down, getting your popcorn, watching a movie is an experience. It's like a theater. That's like something you sign up for. That is cinema to me.
Absolutely. And this is another stream entirely, but it's the debate between streaming versus cinema. Streaming services versus cinema is something that's very I could go on for hours, but I won't now. But the be all and end all is that it's two completely different experiences, two completely different settings. And there's something for everyone, sure. But at the end of the day, it just depends on what kind of medium you prefer, which you'd rather spend the more time on, and what you'd just rather invest more of your time in at the end of the day.
I think that is a wonderful note to end things on. At the end of
Agreed.
the day, it's about audience reception and the preferred media types, you know? How is this going to be received? How are we going to give it to them in a meaningful way? How can we, as producers, as creators, make something with intrinsic value to what we chose to make it on?
For
Any
that specific target market.
exactly. So any closing thoughts, boys?
I think we covered quite a bit.
That's a very
Yeah, I
interesting
think
topic, though.
we're
We
good.
can come back to this another time if even needed. Any
Yeah.
last thoughts from chat?
Infamous Paragon, our soldier.
Our absolute
Also,
soldier.
let's go.
Mope. Okay.
Cope. Cope.
Well then, this has been the Last Call podcast. Fantastic to have another
Oh,
talk downstream
nope.
like this. Yeah, I think I think I understood him.
We got that.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah.
Well, boys, this has been the Last Call podcast, and
Thank you to those who joined for
yeah,
watching.
that was fantastic. Always nice to sit down with the boys.
Indeed.
We will see when next we can do this. The schedules are a bit conflicting.
Unfortunate.
We'll see
There
you
will
around. This
be
will be posted on YouTube as a VOD, most probably. Maybe
Oh.
some editing. And we'll see.
What was it? Sounds good.